Good evening. How are you? Well, I'm doing a stand and talk this evening because of the heat outside. And I much prefer to be walking the trails, but sometimes it just doesn't make sense. And because of work I had for my clients, it's only now that I get a chance to talk to you. There are a couple of things I'd like to highlight, and you probably followed them yourself. But one of them is the fact that we have Republicans that historically have been concerned about and careful about Russia, if you will. Gorbachev, take down this wall. Remember that from a guy named Reagan? Well, they seem to have a very different position about Russia these days. They want them to interfere in the election because they can't get enough hand-grown American voters to go with the Republican Party. And the best example, of course, is the 2016 election, which Putin himself implicated himself in our domestic election with the arms outstretched of Trump and all of his corrupt minions. So that's kind of the background. And now the latest challenge is that Russia is threatening us. They're telling us that they're going to take out, or they may take out, the West Internet and GPS. And that probably would happen by destroying or compromising the underwater cables that are critical to both of those things. Now, they say it's an oil pipeline that was ran from Russia to Germany, and that was an effort to hurt Russia, and so this is them coming back at us. But whatever happened to the Republicans being on the side of NATO and America and a history that opposed Russia, especially in its excesses and its a willingness to attack neighboring nations, which is why we have NATO to protect us exactly from that kind of extension. While we're on the subject of war and what's going on, we have a difficult pairing between those in the Middle East who can settle this thing. Netanyahu, of course, and the Hamas leader, Yahya Sinwar. Can they settle anything? Now, it would appear that Netanyahu is prepared to have this thing go on until it reaches a point in which there's nothing to fight about. There's no one left standing. So we have that. And we have a very difficult set of questions. Now, the administration is doing everything it can to get this straight, but it's not working right now. So I hope that they figure it out before we just end this in a warlike bloodbath, like something like what Trump is proposing may happen in America if he doesn't get his way. Now, Trump is in a very difficult situation. I think that he's decided that he can't win the election, and I think he's thinking his game plan is better spent if instead he's fighting about the election on the day of the election. And he's chosen certain places. One of the obvious examples is Georgia, where at a recent rally, he singled out, or tripled out, if you will, 3 of the officers in Georgia who were involved in the election, and basically telling everybody to cheer them on because they're what he really needs. Isn't that something? I have not, in my experience, and I don't know historically of any incident in which something like this has happened before. The notion of imposing yourself upon the local precinct workers and those in charge of running the election, and then talking about those people that are beholden to you and to your campaign. Running along this line, I'm sure we have the Democrats have a game plan for that election. Years ago, when I was a federal prosecutor, I was assigned the responsibility during a presidential election to be available if there were any challenges to the election. It was in New York City. It was a presidential election. Not one call the whole day. No problems. And that's what this election would be without the perhaps lies and widgetry of the Trump team to, by force and lies and so forth, to compromise the election itself. This would be astonishing if it happens, but it's something that we'll have to defend against. And luckily, we will have the authority in the presidency. But we do not seem to have an attorney general who's awake, who does anything about any of these things under any circumstances. He should resign. And I sure hope that he's not continued when Kamala is elected in November. Now, we also have mixed news and this is both good and annoying to me. Trump has been indicted again by what they call a superseding indictment to meet the objections of the Supreme Court's notions of what's immunity. This involves the Washington case. This involves the interference in the election case. And the trouble I have with this is I don't know that it couldn't be fashioned with the evidence that existed and make the argument and then tailor it in the trial. I also think, since I think it's a pretty fair prediction, that the judge in the case is going to find that there is not merit in the notion of immunity for the president for crimes because these were not official acts. And I think that's how I think it's finally going to sort out. But the thing that's really upsetting to me is apparently the Department of Justice, so-called, is not interested in doing anything to force the trial to go forward before the election. I'm saying, it's only around the corner. Well, it's around the corner and it's not. And who's responsible for it being delayed? It's not us. It's not us. It's been court decisions that are unjustified, and the most magnificent example of this is, of course, the one in which the U.S. Supreme Court has said that a sitting president and a former president can have immunity from prosecution. Outrageous, and it's something that has to change. It has to be one of the things that changes as soon as the election is over and Kamala is in power and we have taken the House and the Senate, and that's got to be our objective. Now, the indictments that Jack Smith has proposed are the same. They're everything there, but what they're doing is they're withdrawing some of the evidence from the indictment because they're arguing that that's the only thing that would be affected by the Supreme Court decision that we insist is wrong. It's amazing, isn't it? And at the same time, we have in Texas this situation in which you have the state of Texas by Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, investigating the Texas Latino elected officials, and they're harassing them, in my opinion, in every way, and the Department of Justice is asleep under a log. Garland really is a piece of work, isn't he? I mean, he delayed doing anything, and then he did it most reluctantly because of two things, I think: the outright outcry from the public and the fact that the Congressional committee, the special committee on January the 6th, laid out what the devil the interference was. But still, I think there have been challenges by the Department of Justice to us going forward. Why didn't the Department of Justice immediately seek to recuse Judge, I call her Luce Cannon, down in Florida? Why not? Why not now? And why aren't we asking for expedited appeals? Why aren't we scheduling trials? So it appears right now, if nothing changes, that the convictions against Trump are those from the local prosecutor's office in New York City. This is a shame and a disgrace. It says a lot about our country that we have not managed to wrestle these criminals to the mat. And I am very encouraged by the pairing, the team that we have. What Harris and Waltz are doing is what should have been done ages ago. And I'm glad they're doing it now, and I'm glad they're making it an issue in the campaign. And so our job is to know what's going on, to follow it, to open our mouths, to send $5 or $10, to encourage somebody else to vote. If you can do more, to do more, and to send those cards and letters to our elected representatives and tell them to get off their lazy buns and do something. So, again, sorry that I have to talk to you late at night from my my work area, my home office. But I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. I don't know how it's going to be. I think we're going to have several days of terrible heat. All the best. Bye-bye.